Hello and welcome to News Centre. Now coming to you live from our studios in Nigeria. I'm Sulaiman. I'll add the headlines. CYRIL Ramaphosa says the ruling ANC should have done more to prevent Zuma-Era corruption. At least 7 people have been killed after a vehicle exploded outside a police headquarters in Mogadishu, Somalia. Calm returns to Chad after opposition protesters demand return to civilian rule. Details of these and more after now. Well, we begin in South Africa, where President CYRIL Ramaphosa has criticized the role of the ruling ANC in preventing corruption under his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. The South African president, in a highly anticipated testimony on Wednesday, said the African National Congress could and should have done more. Ramaphosa, who was Zuma's former deputy, was appearing in his capacity as current leader of the ANC. Zuma has consistently denied the allegations against him.
Conference to reflect on these subjective challenges and recognized the erosion of its organizational integrity as processes have been manipulated to advance the material interests of certain members and associated private companies and individuals. This manifested itself in weak and pliable branches of the ANC. It also manifested itself with vote buying and gatekeeping, factionalism, and open conflict. This provided fertile ground for state capture and corruption.
I'm now being joined by journalist and editor Diane Hawker to unpack this further. Good to see you again, Diane. Now, the president's testimony is in 2 parts, the party and state. What did he focus on today?
Yes, absolutely. The president started his first day of what is going to be 2 days of testimony at the commission, focusing on the role of the ruling ANC. Now, although there's meant to be quite a separation between party and state, in practical terms, what we see in South Africa is that the policies and decisions of the ANC more than often do become policy decisions of government. And that is part of the reason why the Commission actually has also focused on the role of the African National Congress, because so many of its members have actually how so many of its members have actually been associated with government, and they were actually members who ultimately took up positions within government or who took up positions of state-owned entities. And that's really what the focus of that testimony was today.
Well, this cadre deployment issue was a real concern. Why is it a concern for him and his party?
Yes, absolutely, because there's been a lot of criticism of the ruling party about it choosing members of the party or people who are closely associated with the party to take up positions within state-owned entities, and that these cadres, as they are called, are deployed but don't always have the requisite skills, or in fact that there are other people who are more capable of fulfilling this role. But the president pointed out that this was not an unusual thing, that it's something that we actually see quite often in many countries in modern politics. Even if you look at a state like in the US, there are those deployments or appointments that are closely associated to whichever party is actually in power. But the question then arises with regards to the ANC as to how open that process is and whether it's actually compatible with the constitutional requirements of fairness that actually require, the best person be chosen, but also that a fair process is followed. And that's why we've also seen some of those appointments being challenged in court and in some instances also overturned.
Diane, you know, the president did make some admissions in his testimony earlier. Take us through what he said.
Well, as your intro also pointed out, some of the admissions were really that the ANC could have done more and it could have done a better job of gatekeeping when it comes to this issue of state capture. One of the key elements of the state capture inquiry has been questioning the role of the Gupta family and their behind the scenes control of state enterprises, them knowing about key state appointments even before they took place. And in his statement that he read out before the commission, the president actually pointed out that the issue of the Guptas was brought up within ANC structures as early as 2011, which is quite some time ago, only 2 years into that Zuma administration. So even in that, suggesting that much more could have been done to actually resolve this issue if it was actually dealt with early on enough. There's also the question of the ANC's role in parliament and whether members of the ANC who were in parliament did enough in terms of the oversight that's required from parliament in order to ensure that those who come before it, from the ministers to members of various government departments, whether they are actually doing enough. And we had already heard that there were major concerns about the work that parliamentarians were doing, essentially letting those in government get away with quite a lot instead of playing their oversight role.
Many thanks, Diane Hawke, for unpacking this for us.
Thank you.
Now, staying in South Africa, more than 30 prisoners have escaped after a police van transporting them to a law court was attacked by gunmen. Now, some prisoners remained in the van that was forced open by heavily armed attackers. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson, Brigadier J. Naka, said police were looking for those who escaped. A voice note has been circulated online urging residents to beware as the escapees might be looking for civilian clothes. Now, still in southern Africa, Mozambique is set to form a special unit to prosecute terrorism cases as the country faces a growing insurgency. The Attorney General, Beatrice Buchili, made the announcement on Wednesday while presenting her annual report to Parliament. Buchili said the new special unit would be dedicated to investigating and prosecuting complex crimes. Insurgency in the country broke out in 2017, and the rebels have stepped up attacks in the past year. Now we move to Somalia, where police and health officials say at least 7 people were killed and more than 11 others wounded when a vehicle exploded outside a police headquarters in the capital, Mogadishu. A police spokesman, Colonel Abdikani Khalaf, said the suicide bomber tried to drive into the headquarters near the X-Control Road but was thwarted. Khalaf said, he's been fighting erupted on Mogadishu, in Mogadishu on Sunday amid heightened tension after the lower house of parliament passed legislation on the extension of President Mohamed Farmajo's 2 term by 2 years. In the meantime, United Nations Humanitarian Agency on Wednesday said that between 60,000 and 100,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in Mogadishu, Somalia, following an outbreak of violence on April 25. The UN Acting Humanitarian Coordinator for Somalia, Cesar Arroyo, said those displaced include vulnerable internally displaced persons who had sought refuge in the Somali capital but have been again threatened to flight. Now, fighting erupted in the town amid heightened tension after the lower house of parliament passed legislation on the extension of President Mohamed Farmajo's term by 2 years. In East Africa, a Kenyan Court of Appeal, Judge Martha Koome has been nominated as the country's next Chief Justice. If appointed, Koome will become the country's first woman to hold that position. The Judicial Service Commission interviewed 10 candidates for the position, and she emerged top of the list. Her nomination has been forwarded by the Commission to the President for appointment. One of the candidates, lawyer Fred Ngatia, claims he was rigged out. Vice Chairman of Kenya's Judicial Service Commission, Olive Muganda, made the announcement.
Judicial Service Commission, JSC, has finalized the process of evaluation of the various candidates interviewed for the position of Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. The JSC has run an open, transparent, and competitive recruitment process that has witnessed the participation of the public and key stakeholders. After lengthy deliberations and careful consideration of the performance of the various candidates, the JSC has unanimously recommended the appointment of Honorable Lady Justice Kome Martha Karabu, Judge of the Court of Appeal, as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, and has submitted her name to His Excellency the President for appointment. The Commission wishes to thank all the candidates, Kenyans, and all stakeholders for their participation in the recruitment process.
I'm now being joined by East Africa correspondent Abdul Noor Aden. Good to see you, Abdul Noor. What can you tell us about Judge Martha Koome and her appointment as the next Chief Justice?
Well, thank you so much. Now, Kenya's 15th Chief Justice for the first time historically, being a woman, and the Registrar of the Judiciary being a female herself, and the Deputy Chief Justice being a female herself, totally has brought some sort of excitement to the country. But Chief Justice Martha Koome, before her appointment or her victory as the Chief Justice, was a judge of the Appeal Court. And her contribution to Kenya's judiciary also makes her as the second person, who goes or who ascends to the Chief Justice position right from the judiciary. The previous or the first Chief Justice under the new constitutional dispensation, retired Judge Willie Mutunga, was the only person who became a Chief Justice just being a lawyer.
Now, we're looking at women's inclusion in Kenya's political system. How does this appointment change the equation?
Well, first of all, the former Chief Justice, the retired David Maraga, whose replacement now, or whose position Chief Justice Martha Koome is taking, had called for a dissolution of the Kenyan Parliament for not meeting the constitutional threshold of 2/3 gender rule. But now, seeing the judiciary being at the forefront of promoting that gender balance and gender equity, actually has brought some hope in terms of breaking the ceiling for women.
Well, some of those who were actually in line for this position are saying that they were actually rigged out. What have you what are your findings on those allegations by that particular lawyer?
Well, apart from Fred Ngatia, who was himself one of the candidates or the contestants for this position, we've also had the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey. We've also had Makau Mutua, who is a legal scholar based in the United States, who's also a prominent figure in the Kenya legal landscape. They've all accused the process of being, fixed or predetermined. What we know, or what we can tell, is that this is a decision that was reached by the Judicial Service Commission, or the body that was interviewing these judges. And what we know is that this was an interview which was conducted, which was being televised publicly, but we cannot tell what happened in the boardroom, or whether there was any collaboration or corroboration between the executive and the judiciary in deciding on Chief Justice Martha Koome.
Well, Abdul Noor, many thanks for speaking with us on this news. Well, in West Africa, one of the students abducted from Greenfield University in Nigeria's northwestern state of Kaduna has been buried today after she was killed by her abductors. Earlier, we spoke to News Central's Amadi Uye, who's been following the story and was on the scene.
We did not witness any state official at the burial, at the church service or at the burial ground. There was a lot of crowd though, but we did not witness any. and the state government has refused to comment on the situation. In fact, the state government has held its stand that it will not negotiate with terrorists and bandits and will not in any way open any channel of communication with those responsible. I spoke to several people sometime this morning, and it's a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of helplessness, a feeling that many of them are now going theological or spiritual, as you will call it, looking up to God for help. But as it is, they have given up hope that the government will be able to curb and tackle this hydra-headed monster that has come to become a part of their normal and day-to-day lives. So right now, many of the citizens feel very helpless and hopeless and are hoping that something is done so that they can return back to their normal lives.
In the meantime, 2 students abducted from the Federal University of Agriculture in Nigeria's mid-central state of Benue have secured their freedom. Their release comes 4 days after gunmen stormed the school after its convocation and kidnapped 3 of the students. Spokesperson for the State Police Command, Sewuse Anene, confirmed their release, adding that the students were rescued and hurt. He said no ransom was paid for their release. The kidnappers had demanded a 20 million naira ransom. Nigeria's election umpire has announced the date for the 2023 general elections in the country. Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu, made the announcement on Wednesday at a public hearing to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission. Professor Yakubu said the 2023 general elections will hold exactly 1 year, 9 months, 2 weeks, and 6 days, or 660 days from today. He said the Commission hopes to release the timetable and schedule of activities for the general election immediately after the Anambra governorship election in southeast of Nigeria, scheduled to hold on November 6 this year. In Central Africa, the capital of Chad appeared calm on Wednesday, with security forces deployed in large numbers and burning tires still smoldering in the streets. Now, this follows Tuesday's protests, where protesters demanding a return to civilian rule clashed with the army. The government said 5 people were killed in clashes on Tuesday. Egyptian archaeologists working on the Nile Delta have uncovered dozens of rare pre-dynastic birds dating to the period before pharaonic kingdoms first emerged more than 5,000 years ago. The findings in the Dakhiliyah province north of Cairo could shed light on 2 important transitional periods in ancient Egypt. And the archaeologists also found tombs nearby from the later period when Western Asian migrants took over the country, putting an end to Egypt's Middle Kingdom. They also include 37 tombs from the time of the Hyksos, which began migrating across the Sinai into Egypt around 1800 BC. Now, when the news returns, we'll bring you the latest on the coronavirus across the continent as Botswana's president goes into self-quarantine. Details of this and more will return. Welcome back. Now, Botswana's President Mokgweetsi Masisi is in self-quarantine after a member of his staff tested positive for COVID-19. A statement from the presidency said the decision to go into self-quarantine was out of an abundance of caution. Masisi will now miss a Southern African regional meeting, which he was due to chair on Thursday to discuss recent attacks in Mozambique. The president's press secretary says Vice President Slumba Sogwane will now lead Botswana's delegation to the summit. Now, Zimbabwe has received $75 million from the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria and the COVID-19 pandemic. Information Minister Monica Sumgawa disclosed this during a post-cabinet media briefing, adding that the funding is for 3 years from 2021 to 2023. The minister, however, noted that the government continues to provide resources from its own coffers for the COVID-19 response program, with 11 billion Zimbabwean dollars being released since the outbreak.
Cabinet considered and approved the pharmaceutical manufacturing strategy in Zimbabwe 2021-2025, and this was presented by the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, Honorable Professor Mugwira, as Chairman of the Combined Cabinet Committee on Science and Technology Development and Application, and that of Industrialization and Export Development. Cabinet acknowledged that the major challenge bedeviling the pharmaceutical sector was low production as a result of use of obsolete and antiquated equipment, cumbersome registration procedures, and limited innovation. Implementation of the pharmaceutical manufacturing strategy will not only resolve these bottlenecks, but will also result in increased production of essential medicines for both domestic and export markets. The objective of this strategy include the following. First, to increase the market share of local pharmaceutical products from the current 12% to 35% by 2025. Secondly, to increase local production of essential medicines from US 31.5 million to US 150 million by 2025. Then thirdly, to increase local production of essential medicines from 30% to 60% again by 2025. And fourthly, is to improve exports of pharmaceutical products from 10% to 25% by 2025.
Now, human trafficking is common in different parts of the world, but it has been discovered to be rampant in Africa. The crises on the continent have resulted in child labor, a high level of unemployment and poverty. The quest for survival in the midst of these crises resulting in an increase in child trafficking is a cause for concern. News Central's Chidima Ihenatu gives us more.
Human trafficking, the crime of forcing people into labor or sex acts, is an ongoing problem in Africa and around the world. An estimated 40.3 million persons worldwide are victims of human trafficking, and 1/4 of them are children. On Wednesday, a virtual conference focusing on child trafficking in West and Central Africa was held by the Institute for Security Studies in partnership with the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime.
We have witnessed serious incidents of transnational organized crime that has to do with child trafficking. And there is a troubling dimension that we're also witnessing in the recent time, which is associated with baby factory and baby trafficking. That is one of the research that we're looking at now in West and Central Africa.
Modern slavery occurs in every region of the world and is most prevalent in West and Central Africa. Children face heightened risks of exploitation, especially since school closure as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic have hindered access to not only education, but also the main sources of shelter.
Child trafficking sadly is one of the fastest growing criminal industries in West and Central Africa. The report shows that taking children from Guinea-Bissau to Senegal under the guise of religious education and then forcing them to beg on the street has become the most visible form of human trafficking in both. Deep poverty, religious fervors, and ambitions for their children drive many rural parents in Guinea-Bissau to place them in the care of Quran or marabouts based in Senegal.
These children were often subjected to exploitation.
Begging has always existed in Senegal since the advent of Islam in the 11th century. and it was an accepted practice, but the purpose was mainly to instill to young learners some cardinal values such as humility, endurance, and courage. And within the community, there was a very well-established almsgiving practice. There was a patronage system. Each family keeps a meal for a child or for a young learner. During lunchtime, he would go grab it and return to his Quranic school or Dara in Senegal.
In some countries, because of the coronavirus pandemic, more children are forced into the streets in search of food and income. The coronavirus pandemic has caused a rise in exploitation while also cutting off support services for some victims. Chidima Ihanitu, News Central Television.
Well, still ahead, Saudi Crown Prince wants good relations with arch rival Iran. We'll have more on this when we return. Join us again. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says his country wants good relations with Iran. The prince told Al Arabiya TV that his country wants Iran to help push the Middle East towards prosperity. He, however, noted that Saudi Arabia had an issue with Iran's negative behavior, citing its nuclear program, missile launches, and support for outlaw militias. The Crown Prince added that Saudi Arabia was working with its regional and global partners to find solutions to these problems. His comments come days after reports emerged that top Saudi and Iranian officials had held secret talks in Iraq in a bid to repair relations. Now, the World Food Programme says an estimated 3.4 million people could fall into worrying stages of food insecurity over the next 6 months and potentially require assistance. WFP's Deputy Country Director in Myanmar, Marcus Pryor, said the agency has been very concerned for a long time over food security situation in Myanmar, with pre-existing poverty compounded by the impact of COVID-19, particularly in urban areas and the political crisis in the country. He noted that there has been significant out-migration from Yangon, and many of the factories are currently closed or operating at a very low level.
It's been a very difficult few months for many people. It's true that there has been significant out-migration from Yangon in particular, but also that many of the factories are currently closed or operating at a very low level. But the port is operating at a very low level as well. And the banking system is semi-paralyzed. And it's not uncommon to see people queuing in long queues simply to have access to cash. And this is also having an impact on people's ability to transfer cash through money transfers, both within Myanmar and coming into Myanmar from abroad. So this all added up to a situation of real concern, and one where WFP has estimated that over the next 6 months, as many as 3.4 million people could fall into worrying stages of food insecurity and potentially require assistance from ourselves or other actors.
Now, Ghana's military has launched a nationwide operation to clear illegal miners out of its water bodies. The Ministry of Land said in a statement on Wednesday that 200 soldiers were deployed to remove all persons and logistics involved in mining. The Water and Utility Agency said pollution from mining has contaminated water sources across the country, with mercury and heavy metals raising the cost of water treatment and limiting access to drinking water. Ghana is one of Africa's largest gold producers, but more than 35% of the country's gold is unearthed by small-scale and informal miners. One African company is now a pioneer. Now, Tolulokpa Delere Balogun tells us more.
Thank you so much, Suleiman. And in business, we start in East Africa, where the Central Bank of Kenya is issuing 15-year treasury bonds that will attract a coupon rate of 12.734% per annum. Investors will be paid a determined market rate for the 25-year treasury bonds. Now, interested bidders can submit completed bond application forms to any CBK branch using all available channels, including mobile or internet banking platforms. The deadline is May 4th. While the auction date is May 5th, investors will obtain details of amounts payable for successful bids from the CBK on May the 6th. The bank will rediscount bonds at 3% above the prevailing market yield or coupon rates, whichever is higher. This is upon written confirmation from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And from the east to the west, the Central Bank of Nigeria now has injected $1.47 billion into the foreign exchange segment of the market as part of efforts to stabilize the Naira in January. In its January report on foreign exchange market development, the CBN noted that this was a decrease of 47.4% and 64% from preceding months and the corresponding period of 2020. A disaggregation showed that foreign exchange sales at the INE, SMIS, SME, and Interbank fell by 79.9%, 38.3%, 19.8%, and 37.3%. They fell to $0.22 billion, $0.48 billion, $0.10 billion, and $0.04 billion, respectively. Similarly, foreign exchange cash sales to BDC operators and matured swap transactions fell by 19.3% and 48.7% compared with the preceding month. On the issue of diaspora remittances, in order to promote transparency and increase diaspora remittance inflows, the CBN reiterated its stance that only licensed IMTOs were permitted to carry on the business of facilitating remittance transfers into Nigeria. African technology startups, particularly those operating in the financial technology space, are attracting global attention, and for all the right reasons. One player has now achieved pioneer status in the African fintech space.
Nigerian fintech company Flutterwave has been named a pioneer by Time magazine in its list of the 100 most influential companies making tremendous impacts across the globe. Flutterwave is also the only African company that made the list, which included Apple, Twitter, Facebook, among others. In a website post, Time noted that the digital payment service has been able to rapidly set up storefronts for 20,000 customers, throwing them a lifeline when pandemic lockdowns hit brick-and-mortar businesses in Africa. Flutterwave made the headlines early in March when it reached a tech unicorn status by raising about $170 million in Series C funding from investors. The development raised the company's value to more than $1 billion.
Now, despite electricity generation starting in Nigeria in 1869, I'm sure you didn't know that, Africa's largest economy has not been able to meet the electricity demands of her ever-growing population. On Business Edge today, I spoke to Tunde Leye, partner at SBM Intelligence, and he explained why Nigeria's electricity provider has not been able to live up to expectations.
Things continue to grow. We didn't plan to grow with it. And so as time went on, the demand outstripped the supply. And what the government will then do was, because these things became nationalized and the government could not keep up, the investments that needed to go into the sector did not go into the sector. Ultimately, it failed. However, there have been reforms, but you could say that the reforms have been half-hearted, right from even before the advent of democracy. The reforms had started. Obasanjo's regime accelerated it. Yar'Adua's regime reversed some of them. But what happened was that portions of the value chain were privatized, were liberalized, while other portions were left unliberalized, and those have become sort of bottlenecks.
And finally, the African Union has announced plans to construct industrial parks. Now, these parks are to enable the manufacturing of agricultural products as well as enhance the supply chain. The AU Commission disclosed this when it launched the framework to boost intra-African trade in agricultural products and services. The Commission noted that Africa's demand for food exceeds the domestic supply by 20%. It urged the continent to take advantage of the fast-growing intra-African market opportunities. The AU Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development, Josepha Sako, during a virtual webinar on improving the agricultural trade in Africa, said that the AUC was aggressively facilitating supply and improvement in basic infrastructure to support export processing on the continent. She pointed out that market access remained a key challenge for both intra and extra-African trade, with the Commission working to provide support on all fronts. And that's the business we have for you at this time. You are, of course, watching News Central NC Continental Prime. It's back to Suleiman. I'm Tolulokwe Adileru Balogun.
Many thanks, Tolulokwe. Now, for all that's been trending in so many countries across the continent, let's now join Sheun Bankole from our digital team.
Welcome to NC Trends. I am Sheun Bankole. Are you glad to be in your country? Well, Kenyans are glad to be in Kenya, and they have taken to social media to celebrate and identify with the East African country, which now boasts of having the largest mall in East and Central Africa. That's the Two Rivers Mall. Now, some of the excited reactions online include this tweet from @crazy_tenant, who says that, I am glad to be in Kenya. Our sports sector is doing great in supporting talent. Nice one. Moving on, we have this tweet from Kendi, who says that Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge is the first human being to run a marathon in 2 hours, 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, Kenyans are not limited. I am proudly Kenyan. # glad to be in Kenya. Finally, we have this tweet from Fuata Unyuki, who says that Kenya has the best all year round weather. Wow. With 2 rainy seasons, fertile soils, rich savanna, rich fauna and flora, sun-kissed beaches, and friendly people, Kenya has one of the best weathers and climatical conditions in the world. # glad to be in Kenya. Now, another big topic on social media today is the #StopGalamseyNow, currently trending in Ghana. Now, Galamsey is a local Ghanaian phrase for illegal small-scale gold mining in Ghana. Despite the president's promise in 2017 to eradicate the problem of Galamsey once and for all, it still remains widespread. But on Wednesday morning, to ensure that mining within water bodies is immediately stopped, the president of Ghana authorized the Ghana Armed Forces to remove all persons involved in mining from Ghana's water bodies. Glad news. Now, while some are glad about the development, some Ghanaians think it's a sham. Now, let's take a look at some of the reactions. Your A. Aban says that a bold step by the president. The government cannot do this alone. You must also help as a citizen to stop Galamsey now. Okay, moving on. Afiaba Kwame says that we all have a role to play in this fight against Galamsey. It is our water, it is our land. Let's put aside our political differences and help the government win this fight. #Stop Galamsey now. Well, here is another angle from Anan Perry Arin, who says that we have seen the Stop Galamsey now severally with soldiers involved, but the Operation Vanguard ended up protecting MPP officials to do Galamsey. Akufo-Addo should stop the hypocrisy and just order his party to stop Galamsey now. Well, we are going to keep our fingers crossed on that one. Finally, on NC Trends today, Nigerian social media has been thrown into a frenzy following the online altercation between actors Iyabo Ojo and Yomi Fabiyi. In a video circulating online, Iyabo Ojo expressed her displeasure on the rape allegations leveled against her colleague, Olanrewaju James, otherwise known as Baba Ijesha. But Yomi Fabiyi responded that evidence should first be provided before people start tagging Baba Ijesha as guilty. This really infuriated Iyabo, who put out a counter-reaction, and now many people are supporting her submissions. This includes a tweet from Bolanle on Instagram that says that no rapist sympathizers will be tolerated. Thank you, Iyabo, for taking the stand. Moving away from that, Tolulope Adeleru Balogun at Tolulope AB says, absolute respect to Iyabo. This is what demanding accountability from people who should know better looks like. I agree with that one. Finally, Pam Pam at the Only Ologi says that we need more women like Iyabo, not afraid to call out sexual violence in the entertainment industry, not afraid to call out their colleagues for being stupid and supporting nonsense. That's all on NC Trends today. Back to Sulai with the news.
Well, thanks, Sheon. And we'll keep our fingers on that. No one is in support of rape, and that's the drive here in Nigeria, pushing every pedophile and sexual predator out. Now, looking at sports, questions are still being asked 28 years after the entire Chipolopolo team was killed in a plane crash. Showing Yeo Barrow has the rest of that report and more on sports.
Thank you, Sulaiman. In the world of sport, now I would say we start from Kenya, as the fastest 400-meter sprinters this season, Zablon Ekwam and Helen Siubo, are out of the team that is due to leave for this weekend's World Relay Championship in Poland. Athletics Kenya's director for competition, Paul Mutwi, says the two were among 6 athletes and 2 officials left out due to the various reasons, including unavailability and medicals. William Mugo now takes over as the head coach. Now moving away from that, now to swimming we go, where we see the swimmers Danilo Rusefio and Emily Muteti will represent Kenya at the Tokyo Olympic Games, as Kenya Swimming Federation confirmed that the 19-year-old Rusefio and the 22-year-old Muteti were selected based on the new qualification guidelines provided by the International Swimming Governing Body, FINA. The selection was based on the top ranking points from FINA qualifying events and the participation in the 2019 FINA World Championship in Gwangju, Korea. The duo would be participating in the Olympic Games for the very first time. To tennis now, South Africa's Kevin Anderson has beaten late replacement Roberto Sabalas-Biner in the second round of the Australian Open. Anderson was due to face Kai Nishikori, but the Japanese star was forced to withdraw with a right abductor injury, leaving the Spanish 93rd ranked Sabalas-Biner to step in, losing to 34-year-old Anderson 6-3, 7-6 to Anderson in a match which lasted an hour and 51 minutes. The South African will face either Croatian 6th seed Marin Cilic of Nunebergs of Portugal in the quarterfinals. On Tuesday, South Africa's top-ranked tennis player Lloyd Harris crashed out of the tournament in the first round, losing to Italian Marco Conato 6-3, 6-4. And now to the AFCON saga between Sierra Leone and Benin Republic. The Sierra Leone Football Association will decide whether to appeal to the Court of Arbitration of Sports over the abandoned 2021 African Cup of Nations qualifier against Benin Republic. This comes after the Confederation of African Football on Tuesday rejected the Sierra Leonean Football Association's claim that they should be awarded a win for the game rather than it being rescheduled for June. The Group L tie was supposed to have taken place in Freetown last month, but was called off when Benin Republic refused to play after 5 of its players tested positive for COVID-19. A draw for Benin Republic will be enough for them to see them through to the finals. But Sierra Leone need at least 1-0 win to qualify for the African Cup of Nations. Now, in a tragic event, families of Zambia players who were killed in a plane crash are still asking questions 28 years after. Now, despite winning the compensation case in 2002 after a protracted legal battle, the families are unhappy that the cause of the crash remains unknown. The players were traveling to Senegal for the 1994 World Cup qualifying match when their military plane blew off after a stop in Gabon. Now, all the people on board, including 18 players, died. Zambia football legend and 1988 African Footballer of the Year, Kulisha Ba, tweeted on his Tribble, for the fallen heroes. We do say that the souls of the departed rest in peace, and the Lord grant those families the fortitude to bear their loss. And that's it on Sport Update at this time. I am Onyechi Obara. Over now to Sulaiman for more on the bulletin.
Now, the communication regulator in Kenya has suspended a television station and fined it for airing a pornographic scene during a children's program. Mount Kenya Television has been fined 500,000 Kenyan shillings and will also be off air for 4 weeks for the offence. The Communication Authority has also ordered that all staff be retrained and get accredited by the Media Council. For the rest of our entertainment news, we'll look at the Ogulu music family, where the talent of Nigeria's Grammy-winning singer Burna Boy was nurtured and developed into making him an African giant.
Burna Boy is arguably Nigeria's biggest music star, with many international awards credited to his name, including being the first Nigerian to win a Grammy for an independent body of work. Today, we celebrate not just the star, but his mother, who doubles as his manager. Mama Burna, as fondly called, Mrs. Bose Ogulu, is being celebrated by Billboard as one of the international power players for 2021.
Thank you, Africa, because that's the constituency for which we got noticed in the first place. And the message from Burna, I believe, would be that every black person should please remember that you were Africans before you became anything else. Thank you.
Let's go on the streets of Lagos and find out how much Nigerians know about the African giant.
Who is Damini Eboluwa Ogulu? Who be that? Who do you think that is? A very popular musician in Nigeria. Damini Eboluwa Ogulu. Who do you think it is?
I think that's Burna Boy.
You think so?
Yes, that's Burna Boy.
What is Burna Boy's real name?
Burna Boy's real name is
Damini.
Ha, we see.
Yes, but I don't know the full name. I'm forgotten.
Do you know who his manager is? Can you guess?
Sorry, I can't tell.
You can't tell? How old do you think Burna Boy is?
Oh my God, no, I can't guess.
Burna Boy, it should be 29 because Whiskey Senior Burna Boy for 1 year.
He was born in 1991 in Port Harcourt, so I think 1991, okay, 30 years.
Yeah, Burna Boy's biggest fan.
Yeah, I love him.
So what state is Burna Boy from?
Yeah, he's from Rivers.
Are you from Rivers
State? No, I'm not.
Burna Boy is from Port Harcourt, Rivers State.
So yeah. How many albums has Burna Boy dropped? It's between 1 and 6. I'm giving you option, between 1 to 6. Can you tell me which number you think it is?
Yo, no, I don't really know the numbers of his albums, but at least I know more than 5.
5. Ha! Name 2.
Twice a Store, African Giant.
Burna Boy is African Giant, yeah,
nice
sure.
He's work hard. He's really work hard. He deserves it. For now, African Giant that I know is Burna Boy.
We've definitely met some huge Burna Boy fans today. Well, from us at the entertainment desk here at News Central, we celebrate the Ogulu family for their work in showcasing African music to the world.
Well, the authorities in Mauritius have issued a disaster alert over heavy rains that have caused flooding in several locations in the country. This comes as the Indian Ocean island has recorded more than 100 millimeters of rain, accompanied by thunderstorms in various regions within 24 hours. The heavy rains have caused severe flooding in the south, a region that had already been affected by heavy rains in the past 2 weekends. Flooded houses and soggy grounds in the region have forced some residents in the country's south to leave their homes to seek safety in shelters or with relatives. Our Met Desk has more on what to expect from the weather tomorrow across the continent. This hour, but before we go, let's take A look at some of the major headlines. CYRIL Ramaphosa says the ruling ANC should have done more to prevent Zuma-Era corruption. At least 7 people have been killed after a vehicle exploded outside the police headquarters in Mogadishu, Somalia. Finally, we told you that calm has returned to the capital of Chad after opposition protesters demanded a return to civilian rule. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also catch up with our news and programs. Just download the News Central TV mobile app on Play Store and iOS. You can also watch us live on Star Times, Channel 274. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.